Hey folks, welcome to the Crawford Institute of Pop Culture Collectibles, and today we're going to do a top 10. And this top 10 is going to be some of my favorite figures and toys that managed to survive from my childhood. So we're going to have to bounce around a lot because these don't follow like any particular license or any particular theme. They just happen to be things that I managed to keep alive from when I was a kid. Hopefully you've managed to keep some of your most precious toys alive. Let's see here. I'm going to start over here with a story about these Marx presidents down here. See these guys? Yeah, technically they're not exactly action figures. They are a set of presidents. They go up through Nixon in this case. I think they made a few more. I think they made it all the way to Reagan before they stopped making them. But the set I have has two Kennedys, by the way. And goes all the way up to Nixon. I loved this set. I had it in a classroom, Mrs. McKeel's classroom in my elementary school. And I loved it. I constantly was playing with it. And she remembered that. And she actually went ahead, and when she passed, she made sure that it was given to me. I was out of college by then, and it really meant a lot to me. It was really very cool of her to remember that. So I've kept that all these years, and it holds a special place in my heart. Now, I loved Snoopy when I was a kid, and I'll have a couple of Snoopies here. This is a vinyl Snoopy with his aviator helmet on. He's over here in the Indiana Jones section. It seemed appropriate to me. This guy would have been from the late 60s, early 70s. And I even had a dog I named Snoopy. I had a beagle when I was a kid. Right below him here, I have another one of my 70s, early 70s toys. This is when Joe switched over to more of the adventure team. That is an original Joe there with flocked hair inside it. And this is the ATV set for the adventure team. The mummy is still inside the mummy's sarcophagus there. You'll see Joe's holding one of the original jewels and the tools, the original tools and winch are on the back. It survived quite well considering how much I played with it outside. They did do a reissue of some of that stuff. You'll see the mummies over here with a different Joe. Back in the 90s, they did that reissue, but nothing's quite as cool as an original ATV. That's number 8 on the list. Let's talk about another G.I. Joe I saved. Actually, it's more the outfit than the Joe. This one was also from the 60s, and I was probably 67, 68, somewhere's in there that I got this. And this is the Marine Corps outfit, the Marine Corps dress uniform. Yeah, that's an original Joe. It's got some pretty good paint. But most important is the costume, which came as a costume set. Then I was able to maintain all of the pieces over the years, including the little shoes. So that's number 7 on my list. I mentioned that you would see more than one, let's turn this way, more than one Snoopy. Snoopy gets my number 7 spot as well. Let's see, where did Snoopy go here? We're going to make you a little dizzy. Oh, he's over here with the astronauts, of course. Just on the shelf above those Marx presidents, there is Snoopy. Now, this would have been about 1968. He's not in perfect condition. I've had to repair his helmet and back where I cracked it. But I loved this guy as a kid. Again, big fan of Snoopy. And this vinyl figure shows how good they could do vinyl figures back then. Right next to him is number 5. That is a talking G.I. Joe from 1967, 68. This is the astronaut. That's the outfit he came wearing and the hat. I happen to have the red-headed version, which is probably the hardest to get. Not to say anything bad about redheads, but they tended to make the fewest of the red-headed versions. And that's my number 5 on the list. Also from my 60s childhood, you know I have a lot of Marx toys, and you know they're going to fill a lot of the top 4. That's just the way it is. And I'm going to do a combo here. I'm going to do the Silver Knight and the Gold Knight, with the Silver Knight and Gold Knight horses in my number 4 spot. These guys are great. They came with a ton of different costumes. You can see the two of them are wearing different helmets and carrying different weapons, and yet Both of them actually came with those helmets. You could swap them around any way you wanted to. The armor actually held up really well. You'll notice that none of it's falling off. There are a few broken tabs, but not very many, and I played hard with these guys. I loved these figures. Constantly was taking the armor on and off of them. So, that's number 4. Number 3 is actually a line that I didn't get a lot of costumes for, even though that was the whole point. But I did have the 2 most important characters, and I still have them. There's my original Captain Action and Dr. Evil in their original costumes. Now, you'll notice that the insignia is missing, long gone off the front of Captain Action's clothing. I do have, you can see he's wearing his little slippers, which is the hardest part to keep, as well as having some of the original weapons. Dr. Evil has one of his original masks still. So yeah, again, this was a set, especially Dr. Evil, that I played really hard with. I mean, Dr. Evil got used as a villain for just about anybody. Both Marx figures and G.I. Joe figures would beat up on Dr. Evil regularly. But I've often said my favorite line as a kid was the Marx figures. And so my last 2 that I have carried over from childhood are going to be in that line. One of them is my General Custer from the line. Still complete. I love this guy. He was another one that got a lot of use. I loved Custer when I was a kid. Before I realized that most of what I had heard about him was utter propaganda. But I still love this figure. I have lots of great memories of playing with this guy, as well as my number 1. I don't know what it is about blondes, but Eric the Viking. There were actually 2 Vikings. You can see the other one down here. But it was Eric that I really liked the best. These Marx figures really held up to hard play. You could bang these things around, bang them into each other, drop them off things. I have a few that actually have holes in the bodies where you'd throw darts at them. Yeah, these things held up tremendously well to a lot of abuse. So those are my top 10 figures from my childhood that I still have in my collection. I have a few others, but those are my top 10. What top 10 do you have in your collection that you managed to keep alive after all these years? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe, and I will talk to you later this week.